The spokesman for the top UN human rights official says the Saudi-led coalition fighting in Yemen may be responsible for international crimes.
It would appear to be the case that the distinction between legitimate military targets and civilian ones, which are protected under international law, is at best woefully inadequate, and at worst we are possibly looking at the commission of international crimes by members of the coalition.
Colville further said the attacks on Yemen include war crimes and crimes against humanity. He said the raids continue to occur with unacceptable regularity. The UN official noted that despite public promises to investigate such raids, no progress has yet been made in investigations. He also condemned a deadly airstrike on a Yemeni market earlier this week.
The airstrikes had completely destroyed 16 shops in the market, which is the primary shopping area for some 15 surrounding villages. And the attack had apparently taken place during the afternoon rush hour when the market was particularly crowded. There were 24 children among the 106 people reported dead so far. UN staff recorded the names of 96 of the victims, although a further 10 bodies were burned beyond recognition.
The UN official also blamed Saudi Arabia and its allies for the civilian casualties. The attack targeting the market in Yemen's Hajj province left nearly 120 people dead and scores of others injured. Saudi warplanes have been pounding Yemeni cities, including residential areas, on an almost daily basis. More than 8,500 Yemenis, mostly civilians, have been killed so far. Millions more are facing a dire humanitarian situation, and Riyadh has defied calls by international rights groups to end the aggression. To gain some perspective, let's go to Max Igan, a radio host and political commentator. Max, it's good to have you here on Top 5 tonight. Now, I want to start asking you the message has been put out that these atrocities, if you can call them, these acts of violence have been amounting to major criminality and on par of international crimes against humanity. Now, what are the mechanisms, in your opinion, in hand, effective ones, to make sure the message is properly driven home and that the perpetrators, being the Saudi Arabian army that is, are brought to justice finally?
Well, look, we've got mechanisms in place that could deal with these sorts of crimes if they were properly used. Unfortunately, they're not, you know. Like, the International Criminal Court could deal with this, but it just isn't. And the UN could deal with it, but it just isn't. And the mechanisms we have in place that may bring this attention to the people simply aren't doing it. The Western media isn't reporting these sorts of crimes at all. The only place we're really hearing about these sorts of issues is from independent media and from places such as PressTV, which is very unfortunate. But these are crimes. I mean, the crimes against humanity that have been happening in Yemen have been ongoing ever since the conflict started, which in the bombing of schools, indiscriminate bombing. The policy seems to be to just shoot anything that moves and bomb all of these marketplaces. And bombing marketplaces and destroying shops like this is a form of ethnic cleansing, because you're depriving all of the 15 surrounding villages of all their food and all their supplies. And we really need some proper mechanisms in place. And in fact, as I said, we do have them if they were only used properly. You know, we need to have people disseminating this information amongst their friends, amongst the public, and getting the word out to people. And we need to all stand up to our governments to have them stand up to hold this situation accountable and deal with this situation and actually put some teeth into the UN, hopefully remove the power of veto from the nations that have it and turn it into a body that actually works if it's going to exist at all.
Now, do you anticipate that further down the road a major criminal case could be essentially put together at the ICC on this particular case?
Look, I hope so. I really do hope that it will. But I think it's going to see who we find in leadership of Western countries to see that happen, unfortunately. There's a lot of crimes going on around the world that need to be dealt with. We're just not seeing that. But hopefully a case will be put forward towards Saudi Arabia. I mean, this is just one of the crimes this regime is committing. Its human rights abuses are off the charts, frankly. And not only that, it's also been seen to be smuggling weapons into the conflict in Syria. It's up to all sorts of nefarious activity, this state, not only these human rights atrocities that it's carrying out in Yemen. So there is a very, very strong case to be mounted against Saudi Arabia, and I hope to see one happen, but will it happen? It's just the way of the Western world to wait and see.
And finally, very briefly, what else can be done in terms of grassroots activities to support this measure and essentially to make sure that the voice of these voiceless people is properly heard and the silence is finally broken?
Well, disseminating information on the ground in all of our communities. I've been suggesting this for a long time. We need to start taking grassroots action in our own communities and start holding our own governments accountable for these actions. These are all war crimes that are being supported by Western governments. Frankly, Saudi Arabia couldn't be carrying out any of these crimes were it not the massive amount of support it received from the West. Billions and billions of dollars worth of weapons funneled in there by Britain and America in the last few years, and it's just got to stop. And what it's going to take is action from the people ourselves on the ground. We've got to realise that we've got some very bad people running all of our governments, and we need to introduce some transparency and get some honest people in place. This freak show just cannot continue, and this whole bankers' war that we're seeing being waged across the world cannot continue, and the people of Western countries have to stand up and call it before it gets too late.